What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the after credits scene. We are talking episodes 1 and 2 of Daredevil Born Again. Super excited to be back with you. This is my favorite character, my favorite series. We're going to be talking about it all the way through the finale, including some post-credit discussions, some theories, and even some of our forecasts and predictions, which will come out on Fridays. So make sure to pay attention to those. Before we get into all this, please like and subscribe. Share this thing all across the multiverse, and make sure you hit the notification bell so when we drop the new content, you'll be the first one to know about it. Like I said, Daredevil is my favorite character for a multitude of reasons. I am a youth minister by full-time trade, and so the religious aspects of it are very interesting to me, character-wise, in terms of how he got his powers, in terms of his abilities and all those kind of things. Just one of my favorite characters, the grittiness of it, his struggle back and forth morally with what he's doing, his vigilantism and all those kind of things really resonate with me. And so I'm going to be full disclosure here. I'm going to be an advocate, a pro Daredevil, pro Marvel person all the way through this series. I am almost 100% sure there's very little that Marvel can do to disappoint me here in terms of this character, because I love seeing them on the big screen. And so if you came here for a lot of critiques and criticisms, you're probably not going to get them. I'll try to be as level-headed as I can be. If you have any critiques, please put them in the comments below and we'll discuss them there. Going to be spoiler heavy, so from here on out, if you haven't watched the show, put a pin in this, come back to it, and we'll discuss it then. Going to go through some theories, some ideas, some did you catch these things, and run some Easter eggs through it. So hopefully we can be done with this in about a 10-minute video session here. But we're going to have a lot of ground to cover, so let's stick with it. First off, how does all this connect? We got some flash forwards quite a bit through the first episode. And I thought they were really doing some things creatively here to try to connect the Netflix series to the Disney series and explain some things to the diehard viewers to know, how does this fit in? Does it fit in? And then move forward into a new era of Daredevil. And so in terms of timeline, we can go through all that later on. But we know that Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock appears in Spider-Man No Way Home. Time-wise, that takes place after Endgame. And so Endgame takes place, when it came out, took place in the future, approximately 2024, 2025. And so if you move forward and extrapolate some things, particularly with Captain America Brave New World, there's an invitation that Sam Wilson gets to go to the White House, and it is dated April 2026. And so if you kind of go back a little bit with the events of Hawkeye and some other things like that, this show sits in a range around, especially once we get through the year time jump after Foggy Nelson dies, and then the month or month after Wilson Fisk gets elected to mayor of New York, and then when he gets inaugurated around New Year's, he gives a New Year's address. Most of this show, at least right now, after the time jump in the first 10 or 15 minutes, the first 2 episodes take place during January to April of 2026 in the MCU timeline. And so a lot of this stuff is happening. It's more recent than anything else that's happened, except for Captain America Brave New World. So we can assume that Thaddeus Ross is the president, but he has not gone full Red Hulk yet. And so those things have yet to happen. This is where this show has fit in at the moment. Given some of the things that happen, Nelson and Murdock and Page have their own practice. They've had it since the end of Daredevil Season 3 on Netflix up until now, which is probably 5 to 6 years. And then you see the events that happened shortly thereafter at Josie's bar with Bullseye when Foggy dies. The assumption there could be that Bullseye was waiting, and maybe he'd been messing with them all along. Maybe he'd been hiding in the shadows, but he chose to take his revenge for whatever reason. I'm assuming that's going to become clear later on. But if it was just a Daredevil thing, if it was just Bullseye going crazy, whatever it was, he chooses to take his vengeance out then. Foggy dies. Matt Murdock crosses a line as Daredevil and hangs up the mask for a little while again. Seemingly in a reverse of fortunes from the season 3 of Daredevil, which saw Matt Murdock throwing away his Matt persona in favor of being Daredevil all the time because he just saw that the justice system wasn't working. He's choosing to believe that the justice system will work, but he still has that rage inside. And there's a whole lot of things we're going to look at that really hint at that, and when it's going to boil over again, I think is going to be the thrust of the entire show, particularly with him and Wilson Fisk and his Kingpin persona. So in terms of timeline and where it fits, that's a pretty good window there for us to work in. I think it's probably going to stay in that window. I don't see them doing any more time jumps. I think this is going to be a couple of month process here. Could be wrong. It could jump ahead a little bit, but even prediction-wise, I'm not really going to throw that out there any further. They would really have to work in things that happened in Brave New World, and to do that, that would mean that when they made this Daredevil show, they would have had to have known those things to interject them in, and then you're holding a secret far longer with multiple series in terms of movies and what leaks get out there than you would have prior. And so my guess is it stays firmly in this window. Saw a lot of things there. My favorite line, though, in terms of bridging the Netflix series and this new Daredevil series on Disney Plus, as they're walking out of Nelson Murdock and Paige, talking about things that have changed in Hell's Kitchen and things that are different, Foggy says, in recognition of that, of things that have changed and things that are new, he says, "Ah, yes, a reverence for the past, but a hope for the future." And I thought that really kind of summarizes what they're trying to do with this series, particularly Feige and the writers and others, moving from the Netflix version and the canon that is there in terms of the characters, and maybe not needing to talk about it, but realizing that these characters do have a past. If you want to go back and see it, you can. If you don't want to, this is where it starts off. People that are new to the show won't have the connection to Foggy Nelson that we do, which may bring up some interesting theories later on. But these new characters and who they are, even for a guy like Bullseye, is a really good introduction, because it looks as though to a new person that Bullseye is somebody that might have been hired to go and take care of Benny's lawyer. That would be Foggy. And so he goes after Benny, finds out where Foggy is. In that moment, Daredevil gets distracted. Bullseye is able to take out Foggy, and then you kind of get a new storyline, as opposed to what we know as diehard Daredevil fans from the Netflix series. Bullseye has a backstory and some depth and some meat to him, and this could have been for vengeance or revenge. And if newbies get to find that out through this new series, that's totally fine. Some jump aheads that we've already seen through some news footage and things like that. The way that the city functions, the way that people feel better with some of the vigilantes around, and how the cops aren't really having to put up as much of a fight because the vigilantes seem to be doing it. There's a drop by Wilson Fisk later on, because he is anti-vigilante, of course, and he makes a comment about not only Daredevil, even though he doesn't say Daredevil, he talks about being accosted by a vigilante, but he's also talking about guys like White Tiger, who we saw in a news footage thing, but he also drops guys who swing around in spider costumes, hinting that Spider-Man is active in New York after the events of No Way Home, and that opens up all sorts of possibilities in the future for Spider-Man 4 and future Daredevil seasons as well. So I really can't wait for those things, and we'll talk about some of that at the end also. But we get some really quick, brief dialogue moments that kind of let you know the tenor of what's going on. News articles, some podcast type, street level uh, with the niece of Ben Urich, which is BB. We find out, and so you get to see that a lot of these things are going on. So you kind of get thrown into this a little bit. Even if you're a diehard Daredevil fan, you kind of get to catch up with them a little bit and see what's going on. This Detective Cherry, who retires, kind of fills in the role of the Ben Mahoney character from the Netflix series. He finds out who Matt is, so it really adds some depth to their conversations moving forward. Matt, in his grief and trauma, moves to a different law firm with this McDuffie woman, and so they start something out. Karen grieves in her own way. It really drives a wedge between their relationship for multiple reasons, which I'm sure will get dealt with in the future too, but it also gives some space for those old Netflix characters to kind of pop in and out, but not to have to be so active in it that they start throwing in dialogue that newbies kind of get lost on. And so I thought the way they kind of have navigated this so far has been really good. It'll be interesting to see how they do it in the future, particularly with guys like Punisher and others. As far as this show is concerned, we get right to the action. I thought the introduction of Bullseye was amazing. Being able to show him and how he does things, and his, where you realize it's a trap before it's too late. The fight scene at Josie's, that if you start it when Daredevil crashes Bullseye into the bar and end it when the scene cuts from the rooftop to Foggy dying, is exactly 4 minutes and 10 seconds of continuous shot. Now, I'm sure they did some fancy edits in there with smoke screens and shadowing and things like that, but it is intended to look like a continuous 4-minute shot, which is an homage to the things that they did in the Netflix show. And I thought it was really great, and it was an awesome shot, an awesome fight to do that with, to show how these two fight differently and to show how skilled Matt is at being Daredevil, but how easily he could be pushed over the edge. And how he really wrestles with this persona in him, that it's not just him doing good, but that idea that there's a devil inside of him. I thought the title of the episode, Heaven's, 30 Minutes in Heaven, or Heaven's Half Hour, was Josie's line to Cherry, where she says, in a toast, I hope you get to heaven 30 minutes before the devil finds out you're there, or before the devil knows you're dead, which is also a clever play for Murdoch being able to find out that someone's dead. And the heartbeat in the background of the fight scene with Bullseye while he's listening to Foggy die was an excellent addition. And it's not just the heartbeat of Foggy, but it is the death of Daredevil as well, in terms of where he goes over the edge. And so all of those things were excellently done. It was a great introduction, and you really feel the grit of the show and the grit of the fight scenes from the beginning. I thought they built out different boroughs and aspects of New York very well, in terms of being away from Hell's Kitchen, which is the grittier side of this Netflix show, showing these guys in Manhattan or Queens or some of these areas really felt like seeing a fish out of water. They don't really belong, and they're trying to fit into these new personas. They did that very well, right down to Murdoch being in suits that don't really, that are form-fitting and look like he's kind of all business, and fully shed that other persona. There's no real place to hide batons or a mask or anything like that. And then the same thing they did with Wilson Fisk when he bypasses his white suit as Kingpin in favor of something more muted, darker, basically showing that he is trying to get past that persona. They went back and forth with that a lot, and obviously I don't think any of us think that those personas are gone. The back and forth in the diner was peak first episode, and just an excellent explanation, and the tension between these two was wonderful, and this desire to move past, but also feeling each other out before the battle ensues, and kind of a who's going to break first type thing. Which one of them is going to break in order to give the other one permission to do all the things that they really want to do, but they don't have a good reason to do anymore. Who is the bigger liar, so to speak? It's going to be very interesting to see how that happens. I think they've positioned everything so that Matt will have no choice but to fight Wilson Fisk in the court of law, and Fisk will have no choice to keep up his persona but to have other people fight his battles for him so he can stay clean, even though we all know what's going on, and the Daredevil persona will have to take care of those people. I think Matt's going to go through some reiterations where he feels like trying to let the police handle it, trying to let White Tiger handle it, trying to let Punisher handle it, but in the end, all of them do it in a way that is either too much or not enough. And then when somebody like Muse comes in, it's going to be a battle that he has to take up because there's nobody else to take up the battle. It's his with great power comes great responsibility type moment. And so I think it's going to be a really great journey, but I'm the world building was really well done, even if it felt different than the Netflix show. All of the different references to their coloring and their heaven above, hell below type thing. Murdoch being on the street, bathed in red light, while the city is kind of going at each other over the election of Wilson Fisk, while Fisk is up in his ivory tower, so to speak, bathed in spotlights which color him in white, and he can't hear any of the chaos. He can only hear what he wants to hear. Meanwhile, Murdoch hears all of it, almost like he's hearing prayers and choosing not to answer them. And so just an interesting dichotomy between the two, and the religious elements are there, right down to Matt walking outside the church and hearing the homily and the liturgy of communion about to be had, but he does not feel like he can go in. So he's still struggling there. It's going to be interesting to see how they weave in these religious elements over the course of the show. Moving into episode 2, the Punisher references, the Spider-Man references. We got that time jump into Times Square on New Year's, where we had two months since the election. We got our introduction into Hector Ayala as White Tiger, and they threw in a little bit of, in the judges' chambers with Matt Murdock, about, White Tiger didn't even have his magic amulet and all these kind of things. We've moved into some of the MCU territory here with those kind of discussions. Even though Iron Fist kind of played with it, they didn't really talk about it as much. In the MCU, we've seen is full of magicians and wizards and aliens and all these things. And so having to deal with those things is going to be a different take, and maybe feel a little different to the Netflix viewers, but it'll fit right in the MCU. Another thing that I'm interested to see how they play out. However, White Tiger and his magic amulet are remnants of Kunlun, which is an Iron Fist comic reference, and you can find a lot of comics with White Tiger in them, including some Daredevil comics, to that end, and you can go down a deep dive with that character. We've seen that the city is on edge, and there's two sides warring with each other. Same with Kingpin and Wilson Fisk, same with Matt Murdock and Daredevil. Right down to Murdock dating a girl in secret from his boss, which he's already keeping a secret life, and she is counseling in secret because of attorney-client privilege, Wilson Fisk and Vanessa Fisk, and they are on two sides warring with each other as well. Something has to give, and when all of these dominoes start farting, when all of these dominoes start to fall, it's going to be very interesting to see the chaos that ensues from all this. Right at the end, as Murdoch tracks down the man that Hector saved in the subway, we get the police officers that have come to take him out for whatever reason, and they end up getting in a fight with Matt Murdock. And as they're fighting, you see a skull tattoo on the wrist of one of them. Now, does that mean that they are simply cops who have turned vigilante because they're taking a cue from people like the Punisher and think they're doing the world a favor by being a little more blunt with those things, which would include the guy that they were accosting in the subway? They don't see him as good. They're shaking him down to try to get to a bigger bad guy. And White Tiger and some of these vigilantes who work in kind of the gray area see the police in their gray area as more of a black and white threat, and them taking off their masks and not being in their masks, and who they are when they're not in their masks and who they really are underneath, is working on a White Tiger level, on the victim in the subway, on the police officers, on Matt Murdock, on Wilson Fisk, and everybody involved with those things. And so I think they have really held tightly to their themes, and I'm interested to see how far it goes from there. In terms of theories, in terms of what's going to happen when, there's a whole lot of comic lore that you can pull from. There is a full comic series called Born Again that is that they played with in season 3 on the Netflix show, that they're probably going to pull a lot from here in terms of the inner turmoil with Matt Murdock. It will be interesting to see how much of that they pull from, but there's also a lot of comic lore with White Tiger, with Muse, who is coming up, with Vanessa Fisk and things that happen with Foggy that may or may not happen. From a veteran Daredevil viewer from the Netflix show, I don't see them going down that road with Foggy and him, secretly being alive. But as a newbie, this show being put on for new people to the series, I could see them doing that as a big twist, and you find out that Foggy is still alive somehow. I don't really think he is, given the heartbeat that was going on, and how long they stayed on him, and then a year later, and then a court case, and all these different things. You never know. If they do, they'll have to give an explanation for it, and I'm sure it will be satisfactory, even if it's not completely filling in the blanks. All in all, I thought these episodes were great. I know there were some complaints about the CGI when it comes to Daredevil's rooftop fight scenes and him flipping around and doing those kind of things, that it didn't look great. Personally, again, if I'm being a proponent of it, I don't mind it. I think the close-up scenes in those fights were very well choreographed. It really gave a sense that he can take a beating and keep on fighting, and that's the grit that you want from it. But his superpowers and his enhanced abilities from the toxic goo vat or whatever that rendered him blind have enhanced his other senses, which would include his sense of balance, his sense of all the way he swings through the air and the way he does things, and he's aware of his environment. I think using a little bit of CG there to make him a little more fluid and quicker and nimble than a normal human being would look really lends itself to his abilities, and you get to see them on the screen a little bit more in those regards than you would if he was just a guy that can take a beating. I think he's more than that, and I think it makes him a little more superhuman in a way that would allow him to stand next to somebody like Sam Wilson, who is very well trained, but he's decked out in Wakanda tech, and he's a smart fighter. We're okay with that, but people have trouble with this. I think it's fine. I think taking these characters in a new direction and letting them evolve a little bit, giving them room to breathe and seeing them in new environments is going to be a really good thing, and I'm excited by it. And it also opens up the possibility of these characters being in other movies and shows and different things that will really open up the character and be really exciting. I think Daredevil, and I love how they are doubling down on it with Disney and the MCU. Daredevil could be an anchor character in terms of being somebody that we root for, that we want to see, that every time they come on the screen we're excited about them. He may not be a Tony Stark charisma-wise as Matt Murdock, but in terms of watching Daredevil fight, in terms of watching Daredevil on the screen and Iron Man on the screen, I may rather want to see Tony Stark and see Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark more than I want to see Matt Murdock and Charlie Cox on the screen. But I'm probably biased. I'd rather see Daredevil fighting on the screen than Iron Man, even though it's really cool and I like RDJ. I think the fights are cooler, grittier, more interesting. And so I think that kind of character is somebody that can really help move the MCU forward in a way that keeps a lot of it not only grounded, but moving in a way that people are really interested to watch, and it adds a whole new flavor and a whole new coloring to what's going on. I'm curious what you guys think. We got 2 episodes in, and we got 7 more to go. It's going to be really awesome. Check back with us on Friday. We're going to have a prediction forecast video for what's coming up in episode 3 and the Easter eggs and the things that you need to watch for based off of stuff that you saw in episode 1 and 2. We'll talk about that broken horn that he keeps in his pocket like a worry stone. We'll talk about all these different elements that are popping up. Tell us what you think in the comments. Share this video, like this video, and check out some of our other videos as well. We got a lot of content you can sink your teeth into. And as always, guys, when the next one drops, we'll catch you right back here. Later.